This is Death or Prison, brought to you by leanonmeusa.org. The men you are about to hear have spent more than 50 years in prison. We bring you stories of hope and encouragement.
Hello, and welcome back to the Death or Prison podcast, brought to you by Lean On Me USA. I'm Laz Lopez, your host, and along with me, my brother, my co-laborer, Pastor Raul Lopez. We also have a wonderful guest today, an author, a substance abuse facilitator, a teacher, a volunteer in the prisons, Mr. John Robert Eddy. With him, I mean, he's got a wonderful testimony. He has numerous of prison terms and arrests. And really, it's an honor to have you here because I know your story. I know your end result. But we want to share with our audience, man, from the beginning, who is Robert and how did this whole thing come about?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm excited. I'm excited to be here and tell my testimony.
How did this start? Where are you from? Where were you born?
I was actually born in Jacksonville, Florida, and I moved at like 5 years old to West Palm. So I'm born and raised pretty much in Florida, but I was raised in West Palm Beach, Florida. So this is where I stomped. There's my stomping grounds, and at the same time, it's where I got salvation and where I turned my life around and got sober. So it's I always like to let people know, man, it doesn't matter where you go. I can't run from myself. So I can go to California or New York to try to get help, but I'm going to follow me. So when you're done and you're ready to change your life, you can do it anywhere. You know?
Yeah, we've heard that. It says, wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah.
So Rob, how about your family, your background? Talk to me a bit.
Believe it or not, I have a great family background. That's what's, kind of different because most of the time you hear people growing up with like really bad backgrounds. I have a very loving mother who's a Southern Belle. My dad's a career airborne ranger, military, Golden Glove boxer. He taught me to yes, sir, no, sir. He told me that he basically taught me and raised me that, son, you can do anything in the world if you work hard enough at it, which, definitely helped later on turn my life around. All those yes, sir, no, sir, open the door for women and working hard. That came into play later in life. Thank God, so it's not that he wastes his time, but the truth is, upbringings aren't always, what it is, man.
No, let me tell you, we can relate. We had perfect parents, not perfect because they all have flaws. They're not perfect, but Raul could tell you. I mean, my dad came from Cuba back in '66, a business owner. We had vacations, the best schools, all that. No abuse, no sexual abuse, none of that. In as far as the parents is concerned, and so we can relate with that. We can relate to that.
Yeah. In fact, we sometimes think that it has to be a dysfunctional family to the point where father was in prison. And I know that there's a lot of people watching that was the case. And we're not minimizing that. But we're also saying that in reality of life, there are families that are wholesome families. But in all three of us, we're dealing here with the monster called addiction. The drugs, it warps your judgment. Just makes you do a lot of things. But there's also a lot of issues that we need to deal with that we weren't even aware of. But it's not always that dad was a crack addict or that mom did this or that. So it affects all of us.
Amen. Yeah, I agree 100%. The truth is when you're done, there's a big saying that I always think of: when the pain of remaining the same becomes greater than the pain of change, you will change.
That's right.
Yeah. And so how did this start? What age your addiction started?
Looking back now, I mean, my addiction started not till I was 18 years old because I got into football and wrestling and did really well with it and had scholarships. But it goes back now thinking I was when I was younger, I was in SLD classes. And now looking back, I know that kind of messed me up, man.
What's an SLD class?
SLD means slow learning disability.
Oh, okay.
So after years, I didn't drink or drug yet, but I had these things going on from a young age. I remember being deceptive. When it was time to like learn cursive, I would copy the cursive on a piece of paper and then hand it in because I couldn't do it. And I remember also doing drawings for my dad. I would copy drawings from like a cartoon character. I would trace it and then give it to my dad and tell him that I drew it. And he would be like, "Wow, son, I'm so proud of you." And I remember them about to put me in, school of the arts when I'm like taking this drawing, and later on in high school, it got to the point where I didn't pay attention. And I remember, when the normal kids went into when we had a big test, I got taken out a test to go test. So not till years later did I realize, man, that could affect you, you know? I started thriving off negative attention around ninth grade. Before I drank or drug, I was in the lunchroom, and I remember getting in a fight in the lunchroom. Someone pushed my buddy, and I got in a fight with this kid. I jumped on him. And the crazy part is that guy right now, he's in prison. He's one of my good friends. He's in prison for a lot of years, man. And I ended up getting in a fight with this guy. And after everyone jumped up on the tables and they're screaming my name out, Robbie. And I remember that day, something changed in me. I basically almost like created another person, you know, and it felt good that people were doing that and saying all that. And from that day on, I started thriving off negative attention, you know, right away. I hadn't drank or drug yet, but I had all those same symptoms, you know what I'm saying? Alcoholism and drug addiction, you know, it's a spiritual malady. And that's when this was kicking in to me right then. I started acting different and getting in trouble. And so I locked into this. All right, man, stay away from Robbie, man. He'll fight you. And so I started getting all these I became popular from that. And then I played football, and I was good at football because I was very aggressive.
If I may, I mean, not that I'm a psychologist, but I'm looking at what you're saying as far as your disability, as far as learning and whatnot, was a little of a complex problem, and you're trying to put this facade that you weren't, and then when it came up to the point where your anger took over, and now you've got this persona now that everybody is like, you know, either fearful or respectful, and so you thrived off that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Which in itself was another like high, you know?
Right.
And that just came into more stuff later on because honestly, all through I played football. I was really good at football. I was very aggressive. And someone wrote in my locker, roid rage. And I wasn't on steroids, but around that time, I remember thinking in my head, man, what would it be like if I really took them? You know, and I got into steroids. So steroids is actually my gateway drug. That's what started. A lot of people, it's weed and this and that. Believe it or not, steroids became my gateway drug and opened up doors to, like, so you're going to find out some really horrible, some really bad things, man.
Robbie, I'm glad you mentioned that because probably a lot of people can relate that it wasn't always marijuana or alcohol. It could have been prescription medication, steroids in your case. But I'm looking at a precursor to the addiction. They say that the drugs are really not the problem. It's what's going on in here, and the manifestation and the symptoms of what's going on in here comes out in the drugs. And eventually, that's why I did 12 years in prison. My brother did 10. You had 45 arrests, time in prison, and that was just the end result. But that negative attention, I just want to mention real quick, I remember being bullied even though I was a tall kid, but I was very docile and very noble at one time. And I remember that I used to escape in my imagination. I'd sit on a park bench and I'd be imagining things, and that was my escape. It was the precursor to the drugs, because once I smoked marijuana for the first time, now I could do it artificially whenever I wanted. And you really don't recognize these things until years later. But as I analyze myself, and you probably think, you see the chronological order of how we come to be where we're at today.
So obviously we can see that anger was also part of your...
Oh, big time. And honestly, that's probably been one of the biggest character defects of my life until recently, after, you know, a couple of years ago when I became born again and got Jesus. It's 100 times better. But that's always been, that was always a big issue for me, which is one of the worst ones to have, man. It's probably one of the worst ones to have.
So how was the first time you did try drugs? How was that? What was the...
Yeah, well,
besides the steroids after?
Oh, well, steroids introduced me after I took steroids. I got around some bad guys and started breaking the law a little bit. And the first drug that I did, narcotic, was GHB. And I got into GHB because it's a bodybuilding drug. And my dad always...
Is that like a hormone or...
No, it's actually, it releases natural growth hormones while you're sleeping.
Okay.
But it's a date rape drug, and it's very powerful, you know, and obviously I wasn't taking it for that, but when I got to these guys that I bought the steroids from, and I started hanging out with the twins that are in my book a lot and that I grew up with, where I got in a lot of trouble with, I remember him saying, hey, my dad always used to tell me, my dad used to play these, he used to act like a drug dealer when we were younger. This is how good I was raised. He would play like, hey son, you want some drugs? And I'd say no. And he would ask me, and after the third time, my dad, which I don't know if it was good or not, literally gave me the permission to fight these kids. He's like, someone asks you and they keep asking you, he goes, you take them down, son. That's what my dad, I mean, he did. And there was good about that, but not. And my dad taught me how to fight at a young age because he was a boxer, which was cool too. But then he taught me always, son, don't ever start a fight. You walk away from them.
Right.
But if someone puts their hands on you, it's another story.
But you took it to another level.
I took it to a whole nother level. I didn't,
So then after the growth hormone and all this
So
stuff.
I took the GHB for the first time, and I remember, man, like I remember that was it, man. It was on. I remember the feeling, and consequences happened to me immediately, man. Like when I tell you immediately, I picked up alcohol for the first time at 18, steroids, and then by the time I was 21, man, I had already had like 12 arrests in and out of the county jail. I was sentenced to the drug farm. I don't know if you guys remember the drug farm. And in and out of court order to the Fern House in West Palm Beach like 12 times. I mean, it was quick. I always like to say, like, whenever I put any mood or mind altering substance in my body, larceny pumps in my veins, I break the law. Like it just, I turn into a completely different person, man. It's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. It's insane. Everything I was raised, everything good about me goes straight out the window, and a whole set of morals come in and they're not good.
Right. Right. And in those years, what would be a highlight that you can remember that was either scary for yourself or almost endangering the life of someone else? Or
looking back, man, I got like I said, at 18, I caught 2 DUIs back to back, and I caught a bunch of other alcohol-related arrests, and
any
fighting.
accidents, like car accidents?
Not yet, but those came eventually. But I remember so many times like waking up, nodding out to the side of the road, going, I mean, I'm on, and there could have been a family on the side of the road, man. There could have been. When I got my second DUI, I woke up in Royal Palm Beach in Okeechobee, right in front of the police department. I passed out, and on the way to Thanksgiving to see my family. And the night before, I remember my dad saying, "Listen, son, tomorrow your grandma's coming, your family's coming. Are you going to be here for Thanksgiving?" And that's how powerful alcoholism and drug addiction truly is. That if I would have took a lie detector test, I'd have passed it. I said, "Of course I'm gonna be here, Dad. What kind of question is that? I'm gonna be here." But as soon as I put that drug in me, man, the phenomenon of craving develops, and I cannot stop. And I blacked out, and 5 a.m, I wake up, to a cop beating on my door saying, "How much have you had to drink?" And I said, "None." He's like, "What's in your lap?" There's a Heineken bottle, and that's pretty much how it was starting.
Did you do juvenile time as well?
No, I never got. I did. My first arrest was 17 years old. I got arrested for fighting, and I got arrested for making a fake ID. If you have a fake ID, it's a misdemeanor. But if you take your ID and you erase it and make it yourself, it's a felony. And I had that, and
so you got a lot of in and out arrest.
Yeah.
Now, some of the audience right now, we may have one guy who's listening right now. This is his first time.
Right.
What was that to you that you didn't learn the first, nor the second, nor the third?
Yeah.
I mean, what was it that just you continued to spiral? I mean, back then, not like now. I mean, DOC right now is doing so much programming. I really want to acknowledge Mark Inch, the secretary, because he's doing a lot with the residents and mentoring and whatnot, and take advantage of that. In fact, Central Florida Reception Center, I want to give a shout out to those guys there. They have an A-team over there of long-term and lifers that are mentors to these first timers and short timers. So, I mean, can you imagine if you had that situation, it would have helped you.
Yeah.
But in your case, what can you talk to these guys that you were in and out of prison, and it just kept escalating and get worse, I'm assuming.
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, it got really, really bad. Like if you can imagine what I can do from the age of 18 to 19, try 19 to 21. Or 29. I got sober and turned my life around at 29 years old. So in 10 years, man, I broke the law. I committed a lot of felonies. got a couple more, 3 more DUIs, went to prison, overdosed on drugs and alcohol about 6 times. I've been brought back with paddles more than once. I've been hit with Narcan a couple times. I became a full-blown heroin addict. I mean, talk about progressive. Like, alcoholism and drug addiction is a progressive illness. It doesn't get any better. It gets worse and worse and worse. And the truth is, it's the enemy. It's the devil, and now looking back, because I know the anointing that I have in my life and the people I've helped, he was just trying to stop me from day one. And the truth is, there's a lot of people in prison, guys that have a big calling on their life, and they think it's over with. They have no idea that you have a huge calling on your life to save lives. And that's why these things were going down. They were attacks from the enemy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the guys are listening right now, and they sit up on their bunks, and count, they're sitting there, and God is feeding them these visions and hopes of them preaching, teaching, helping, substance abuse, whatever their calling are. And they think it's just fantasizing. Listen, man, it's not fantasizing. God is putting a blueprint that your faith can bring to pass.
Amen.
Keep that up. Start confessing it. Start telling friends what God is going to do in your life. I mean, look at us here. It's not that we're all that in a bag of chips, is that we just allowed God to use us. I mean, you can just attest to that.
Well, I have to speak on that because I remember of one incident where I'm in confinement. It was my 78th day that I was in confinement, and I remember seeing myself speaking and helping. God will give you a vision. I have to say this. We all have a purpose. We all have a purpose, and we have a destiny. But our life goes to shambles without the help of, and we're not really religious people. We love the Lord or whatever, but there's a big difference between religiosity and having a relationship with our Lord Jesus Christ. Big difference. The reason I mention that is because I used to think that Christians were weak. Old women and children went to church, and I never knew what this life was all about. So anyway, you're sitting there, you're tired of the counts, of the chow hall, and you're wondering, these things that I'm seeing, yeah, it'll come to pass. And I remember being in my boxers in confinement, in fact, again, for anger. Had a fight in prison, and I knew the Lord. And I felt so guilty because I said, I failed you, God. Here I, did violence to another person, and I'm in confinement. But these visions would come. And I knew that one day it would be able to happen. And here we are. Here we are.
Amen. We had a segment here a long time ago of unintended consequences, and how our family and how they suffer because of our foolishness. In those 10 years, what can you remember?
Oh man, I put it this way. I remember, and it's sad too, because my poor mom and dad. I remember my mom. She would just be a panic when the phone would ring. If the phone rang late at night, she'd be in full-blown panic because I'm just, I'm getting worse and worse. My drinking and drug abuse is getting really, really bad. And I remember always saying, I remember being in meetings and places and hearing people talking about prison and talking about intravenous drug using and smoking crack. And I'm like, and I'm thinking, and instead of relating to them, I was comparing myself because I hadn't been there yet, which is a big deal. Yet, you know what I'm saying? Like there's those yets, because I was like, I will never go to prison, and I will never intravenous use, drugs, and I will never smoke crack. So I shut down to open it up to listening to these people, speak and try to help me and mentor me and pull me back. And, all that came in much, much, much more, to the point, there was times I was using puddle water to shoot heroin,
Wow.
And, by all means. And there, I remember I was shooting so much. I got so bad on heroin. I was shooting so much heroin that I wouldn't use a bathroom to days, that I had to literally use a spoon to dig the crap out of me, man.
Wow.
Because I would become so constipated from the amounts of heroin that I was using, man. Yeah. From a guy that was sitting there saying, I'm never going to do any of that. Did all that to my mom and dad. My dad, and thinking about the parents, my dad, I woke up from a drug overdose one time in the hospital, and I had a catheter in me, and I had a tube down my throat, and I just came to, and they brought me back. And my dad career airborne military. He's a ranger. You can just imagine this man on his knees, just crying like a baby out loud. One of the most painful things you could ever hear, like out loud saying, "God, please don't punish my son for the things I've done." Because it almost gets me choked up now because he was military.
Yeah, we sometimes think that, the parents' sins run over in certain cases.
But it described a lot of where your father's heart was at. We talk about the family, and a lot of times we think we're doing it to ourselves, but actually, when I did time, my family did time. When I suffered, they suffered. I remember when SWAT hit my house, and there was a helicopter. It looked like something out of a Hollywood movie. I remember the M16s and all the cop cars around in a helicopter because they were looking for my brother. My father was always been a very macho, very strong man, and to see him cry. And then I noticed his shame crying in front of the other men. And they took me away. And you know what? It hurts, but I also have to say it was a beautiful thing. Before my father died, we completed the circle of our relationship. Forgiveness happened. God came into the picture, and we were able to reconcile our relationship. And I gotta ask you, I can imagine what your parents feel now.
Oh man, and my parents, and the crazy part of that story, when my dad was like that and I woke up, all I could think about was getting high and drunk.
Mm.
And if that's not a bottom,
Yeah,
but,
what is?
but I had this disease that tells me that I don't have a disease, man.
What's your dad's name?
John. His name's John Eddy too.
John, I appreciate all you did for our country. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that said, so then we had this unintended consequences where we actually look back now. At the moment, we don't see the damage that that we're causing. In our case, our daughters, our parents, in that situation. But also with our loved ones that are surrounding us. Anything else that comes to light back in those days?
Oh man, the truth is, like, and as much as you guys know, it was like that every day. It was some kind of crazy drama, insane situation every single day, man. And all the stuff that I said I would never do, I did. All the most embarrassing things, I did all those things and much, much more. And towards the very end, when my drug use got so bad, and I mean, I drug overdosed many times. I should have been dead. There was a time I overdosed, and I didn't realize this till 2 years after I was sober. I was in the back of the ambulance as my mom's in the back of the ambulance crying her eyes out. I had overdosed, and I'm in the ambulance. They hit me with paddles. Now, and I'm 2 years sober, and I remember this. How did I see that? If they were hitting me with paddles, dude, I was gone. I watched the whole entire thing go down in the back of the ambulance. I watched them hit me with Narcan. I watched my mom cry. I watched everything. I seen them stay with me, and they're hitting me with the paddles.
Like if you were outside looking in.
Exactly. I had to be. I was beside myself. I was watching the whole thing going down, and it was like I was almost like realized what was going on, and I was like, I couldn't speak or anything, and I was coherent, as in I knew. I was like, oh my God, I remember thinking, like, they say your life passes before you. I remember thinking of my poor mom, and I remember thinking like, dang, man, I've done too much. Look, I finally did too much. I remember thinking that. And then, by the grace of God, literally, I didn't die,
Did you stop then on that occasion?
No, not at all.
That's the crazy thing.
Yeah, that's the powerful.
Well, come on. We all know, and those of you who've suffered addiction, you don't want to do it. It's sort of like a driving force that I remember crying to go get drugs. I don't want to do this in the car. I don't want to do this. Yeah. And my feet were walking, knocking on the door, going in, giving the dealer money to get more drugs. Yeah. It's a sad situation.
So, Robbie, considering all these overdose, you seeing yourself beside yourself, you being paddled in and coming back to life once again, seeing the drama and the chaos with your mom and your dad. What experience did you have that actually was, hey, this is the final
That changed your life.
that changed?
One of the starting experience I had when I was younger, my dad taught me, I was about 14 years old. My dad taught me how to cut a tree down, and we roped it from one side, pulled it down, cut it. And then I took the tree and cut it in pieces and took it down the street. Well, there was a stump that was left over in the tree. And my dad said, "Get the stump out, son." And I started digging at this stump, trying to get it out, right? And I spent hours with a shovel, right? I go inside, I said, "Dad, I can't get the stump out." And my dad looked at me and said, "Son, you want to know why you can't get that stump out? Because you don't want it out bad enough." So I go out there, boom. I start going to town on this stump, and I get it out, and I look up, and my dad's in the looking out the window, and he shook his head. And years later, going back after all those ODs, I'm incarcerated again. I'm always incarcerated. And I got on the phone with my dad, and this is around the time that I found God. My dad said, I was on the phone. I said, "Dad, I can't stop. I want to stop. I keep trying." And my dad said, "Son, get that stump out." And that was one of the things that hit me really, really hard. And that night in my cell, I hit my knees.
Don't you make me cry, Robbie.
And I asked God for help that night, man. And and I haven't had a drink or a drug since, man. And there's been a lot of action involved in all that, which we're going to get into.
Which we're definitely going to get into. So if you're listening, you're right now listening to Death or Prison podcast, brought to you by Lean On Me USA. Also, we are partnered with Alpha USA, where you can look us up on alphausa.com, and you can click. And there's also a number that's going to be on the bottom of the screen that you can call and connect with a welcoming, mentoring church near you. Looking forward to our next segment. Stay tuned. Again, this is John Robbie Eddy. I'm Laz Lopez, and my brother, Pastor Raul Lopez. And we'll see you next time. This is the Death or Prison podcast, but we like to say, choose life.
I can change the world. Feed one, teach one boy and girl. Maybe we can change the world.
I want you to know we do pray for you guys. Every night when I leave here, I send out a notice for people to be praying for you. There are people praying for you that you'll never meet. You'll never know their names. They'll never know yours. But they know you're here in this unit, and we're here with you. You're sitting in your prison cell, very far away. I don't know what you're there for. I don't even know your name. But I know Jesus cares for you. He knows just who you are. I feel the need to pray for you, that you'll open up your heart. I don't know you, but I'm praying. I don't know you, but he does. I don't know you, but he's showing me that you matter and you're loved. You're sitting in your prison cell, very far away, tormented by the thoughts that linger night and day. But God, he can renew your mind. He came to give you life. And I feel the need to pray for you, that you'd surrender all to Christ. I don't know you, but I'm praying. I don't know you, but he does. I don't know you, but he's showing me that you matter and your love. You matter, you are love, you matter, you are love. You matter,